One thing I don't see in MGTOW that I can't seem to figure out why is that the expatriate presence is unusually small. Or maybe not an expatriate presence, but some kind of mobility aspect to MGTOW. Because there's a minimalist aspect to MGTOW, there's a hedonistic aspect to MGTOW, but there isn't really a mobility aspect or an expatriotism aspect. Now, from what I can tell, it made a brief entry into the manosphere that was basically find a foreign woman not corrupted by feminism. But then that was taken down by MGTOW's awalt, and I'm not going into that because there's enough MGTOW content covering why expatriotism is not the solution to this particular problem. But I believe that expatriotism is the solution to other problems, and I do believe that MGTOW should get into expatriotism. Now, before that, there's a concept I believe is very powerful, namely voting with your feet. This is basically the expatriate model, if there is one, which is essentially go where you're treated best. Now, you may argue that men will never be treated well anywhere for whatever reasons that other MGTOW have explained much better than I can. But at the very least, we can change go where you're treated best to go where you're treated the least bad. Now, let's take a step back from expatriotism and let's just focus on the different states of the US. What happens if your state implements listen and believe into the legal system? You need to get out of there. Say that whatever state you're in implements a bachelor tax. Get out of there. What happens if the US gets into a war and implements the draft? Just get out of the US. You need to be mobile. You need to go where you're treated best. Now, you don't have to full on expatriate, but at least you need to ensure that you are mobile so that if shit hits the fan, at least locally, not shit hits the fan as in overall society collapses, but shit hits the fan as in, say, wherever you are gets as bad as India, or Sweden, or Canada. Hopefully you aren't in these places. And if you are, then yeah, get out of there. Just get out of there. All the laws are not in your favor. Go where you're treated best, or at least in this case, the least worst. But at any rate, if you are mobile, then you can move as soon as red flags appear. There is one problem with small business, whereas with a job, you can simply get a job somewhere else. But it's much more difficult to move once you have established a client base. So I'm going to go back to the Jews. If you haven't watched my first video, you might want to take a look at that. But at any rate, when the Nazis took over, there were red flags all over the place. Why didn't the Jews get out as soon as the first red flags appear? And I would point towards the fact that Jews tend to have a tendency to run businesses. And this makes them not very mobile. They're already established, and they're going to go down when their business goes down. Now, as MGTOW, we can't let this happen to us. We must be able to move when, I guess the first red flags have already appeared. But when shit gets really bad, then we need to be able to get out of there before it gets even worse. And there's one more concept going on, namely prepping. People prep as if the entire world is going to go to hell simultaneously. But it doesn't. There will always be somewhere that hasn't gone to hell. We need to be able to move there with as much of our assets as possible when our place goes to hell.
And I don't just mean shit hitting the fan overall as in the apocalypse happens, but I also mean situations in which shit hits the fan just for men, such as a wave of new gynocentric laws or the draft or something like that.
For all the bitching we do about gynocentrism and how shitty men are treated, we at least need to be able to do our part. We can't just be all talk. We need to actually do something, which is that when we feel we are being treated badly in a particular place, we need to actually do something and get out of it instead of simply bitching about it. Because you can't control the laws. You can't control society. Because society doesn't give a shit about you. But you can control where you are. Where you are at a particular time, where your assets are at a particular time, you can control these things. So you need to focus on what you can control. So yeah, this is one thing that I don't like about my business because it locks me down. But I still ensure that I am mobile when possible. I'll never buy real estate. And generally this works well with minimalism. And I'm also a minimalist. So if you're a MGTOW and you will understand that society will fuck you, you need to be able to get out of there when you see that fucking coming. I suppose I'll make more videos about ways to be mobile, and more about what I'm personally doing to stay mobile, which is going to tie in a fair amount with prepping, because prepping ensures that you have a certain degree of mobility. Always looking for feedback, and cheers.